Welcome to Biur on the Hecholzot Daf Peizayin of Likkutei Torah Sefer Bamidbar. We begin at the beginning of the paragraph Biur in the first column. So we just learned in the previous stuff the Maimah Hecholzot, where the Yidden are about to wage war against Midian, and Hashem tells Moshe that Hecholzot, that they should that arm from among yourselves, and it doesn't say Yecholzot, they should arm, implying that only certain people will be involved. Instead, it says Hecholzot, which implies everyone. Now, it wasn't everyone involved. It was only it was 1,000 from among you, not everyone, just from among you, some of the people. So if so, why does it say Hecholzot, which implies that everyone's involved, instead of Yecholzot, which implies that there were just certain people that they should get involved? So the explanation is that the battle against Midian actually, at least spiritually, does involve everyone. What does Midian represent? Well, first, the 7 nations represent the 7 negative midas, which evolve spiritually from the spheres of Tohu. There was the 7 kings of Edom before the Jewish people had a king, had the king Shaul. And those 7 kings represent the 7 spheres of Tohu. And then even after refinement, clearing out of the negative, still there is some psalus, there's some refuse left. And therefore, with Avram, for example, that Avram, when he's refined, so then out of him comes some sort of leftovers which created Yishmael. And that's only with Avram as he is in a body, whereas Avram's soul doesn't have any leftovers, doesn't have any refuse, it's just pure holiness. And where that now it says that as the godly light descends through each world, so whatever is the most refined aspects is able to stay within the world of Atzilus. Then whatever's a bit less refined goes down to the further down to Bria, and it's refined enough to stay in Bria. And then the less refined goes down all the way till this world of Asiya. So the difference between Atzilus and Bria, and the same thing, the difference between Bria and Yetzirah and Asiya, is in the degree of self-nullification to Hashem. Now, even the angels and the heavenly host, they're not totally batel, they're not totally nullified. Like we see that even the highest angel, Matot, was still punished. The Gemara discusses, and that's because even angels retain some level of separate identity outside of Hashem. And because even at the highest level, they have some degree of separation and independence, so therefore it can evolve down to actually being psalus, actually having a refuse, and something that has to be refined away. In a similar fashion, so it starts off with everything is l'shem shamayim, that it's all for the sake of heaven. And like we see that it says Penina v'satan l'shem shamayim niskavna, that Penina, the wife of Elkanah, who made things difficult for Hannah, the other wife of Elkanah, she intended for the good. And similarly, the Satan, when the Satan tries to get us to do the wrong thing, or punishes us, it also intends for the good. And so it starts off all positive, but then from the Satan, it ends up in totally evil, totally negative. Like we see that the Gemara in Sukkot Daf Nun Beis says that the Satan caused the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash with all the death that came with it, and the second Beis Hamikdash. And in Eov, it talks about how the Satan said that Eov has too much good, and that's why he's God-fearing. Give him some hard times and see what happens. So we see that the Satan became total evil after it evolves down. Now, the 7 Midas as well, that although they come from a holy source in Torah, but the way they are down here as the 7 nations, they are pure bad. And they are the 7 Midas from Chesed to Malchus in a negative way. Whereas Midian is the ultimate of bad, like it says in Zayar, in Sifra Tzniusa, that in Olam HaTorah, the 6 Midas were each one underneath the other ones, and they weren't looking at each other face to face. Because the midas were all on top one, like Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, unlike the way they are when there's Hiskalus, when there's inclusion, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, where there's triangles where it all comes together. And in Tikkun, Chesed and Gvura face each other, and then there's also a link Keser to Tiferes, the top of the diamond to the bottom of the diamond, or the bottom of the triangle Tiferes. So in other words, all the spheres, all the different characteristics and attributes all work together and intermingle. Now, in Taihu, where there's no connection between Chesed and Gvura, so the kindness is pure loving kindness, the severity is pure severity. And therefore they were opposites. It's like fire and water that can't come together. Over to the second column. Whereas in Tikkun, in the rectified world, they do come together and they're included in each other, because Tayu, there was the shattering of the vessels in Tayu, which there's different spiritual energies represented by different names, different spellings of Hashem's name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. So if you spell it Yud and then Hey as Hey Aleph, then Vav Aleph Vav Hey Aleph, then it equals 45, Shema. Whereas if you spell it Hey Hey Vav Vav Hey Hey, then it equals 52, Shem Ban. So the Shvira, the shattering of Torah, was in the spiritual energy represented by the name Ban, where every sphere is by itself without interaction with other spheres. Whereas in Shema, then there's the spheres are all included together. And that's because you introduce the intellect, and the intellect tempers the emotions. Like we see practically that the emotions are without intellect become each emotion becomes all encompassing. So when someone's angry, he has no mercy and no kindness. And when he's in a state of kindness, there's no judgment. And then each sphere is separate for itself. But when you include chachma, when you include intellect and wisdom, so then the midas are all run by intellect, and then the anger can be controlled to also have some mercy in it. Like the Gemara says, a person should be soft like a reed, not hard like cedar. And how do we become soft? Through introducing intellect. The mind controls the heart. This is accomplished in the world of Tikkun, that first of all, Chesed and Gvura, all the different spheres are included from each other. And that it shouldn't be pure love, it shouldn't be pure severity, but both together. And not only that, but all 6 midas, Chagas Nahiyah, all mixed together. And those are the 6 edges, the 6 sides of a like when you have a cube. When you have a cube, you have 6 sides. Now, when all the 6 midas, all the 7 midas work together, and that's because of there's the intellect which guides them all. And then secondly, so first of all the spheres work together, then the the light, the spiritual light, which energized them. Is also mixes them all together, because in Tohu there were two problems. One was there was limited kalim, limited receptor containers, and number two, there was the light was too powerful, and so the both the kalim and the can lean towards separation, or they can both lean towards inclusion. So when there's a lot of kalim, a lot of containment, so then and the kalim are leaning towards inclusion, so then it can bring everything together. And that is something that Tohu didn't have, and Tikkun does have. But the main point is the difference in the in the light, in the energy. That the light of Tikkun is inclusive light, to the extent that you can have chesed energy in the kli of gvura, or gvura energy in a kli, in a container of chesed. Now in the bracket, the Alter Rebbe explains there are two causes for hiskalus, for inclusion of the midas, the different emotion attributes together. One is when they are guided by intellect, so that brings them together, and the other is when there's a sort of deeper and more powerful light from beyond all of them, that it sort of nullifies differences between them and just unites them together. And then he continues that we could also explain these with when we talk about face to face, that the different spheres are face to face. This can either be horizontal or vertical, meaning that you could either have, for example, chesed and gvura coming together, or you can have like keser coming together with the spheres below it. That you can have the regular midas with atik, or which is the inner part of keser. So that's a vertical inclusion. Now, the Torah describes Rachel in two ways, as Yefas Toyar and Yefas Mara. And the deeper meaning of this, Yefas Toyar is the form, and the form of her body, or spiritually it's the form of her soul, and then Yefas Mara is like the shine. So the Yefas Toyar is that all the midas are in the right balance, and therefore they're all included together. Now we're over the page onto the third column, and so this is all about kalim. And then the higher level Yefas Mara is about the feeling and the energy behind the kalim, the light. And that's another cause of inclusion, that the inclusive godly energy that just unifies everything together. And this is this happens via das, which das realization. It's a unifier, unifies intellect and emotions together, unifies chachma and bina together as well. And das also is about internalizing something, which is also about unity, that there's no difference between theory and practice. Now, when Hashem calls to Moshe and says Moshe, Moshe, so there's no psik, there's no separation in the trop and in the punctuation of the pasuk in between the two names Moshe. And that's because Moshe as he is above and Moshe as he is in the lower worlds is the same. And that's also this idea of unity, we see this in Ozyashir as well, that it says Yemin Hashem Nedar Bakayach, that Hashem's right hand is adorned with strength. So that's the right. And then we have Yemin Hashem Teratzayev, that even to smash the enemies, that's also with the right. So although that's more smashing enemies and war, it's more something of the left, but that's also on the right in the sense that right and left all come together. Now, Midian is the source of Tayo as it is. It comes from Tayo as it is before Tikkun, where there is no face-to-face interaction and union, and therefore Yisro, who was the Kayan Midian, the prince of Midian, is the ultimate of the representation of separation, division, and independence, the opposite of unity. So Yisro had to come and accept Hashem and accept the God of Israel before Matan Torah, because Matan Torah is all about unity. And first, Midian had to be transformed to unity through Yisro coming on board. Okay, base. Now, Tikkun, the idea of inclusion in Tikkun, where all the midas work together, it comes from Hashem Havaya, which is all about unity. Now, the name of Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, can be divided into 4 letters, which each is another sphere. The first one is Yud, which is the spark of the idea, and that's Chachma. The Chachma comes from darkness. In other words, before you have that flash, there's just confusion. It's chaotic. And that confusion is from Keser, in other words, because there's unlimited potential. And although at the same time we don't yet understand anything, so it's dark. Then from Chachma comes to Bina, which is where it's developed. So Taiho or Nekudim is where Nekudim is where you have just a point, and therefore Nekudas vowels is connected to Chachma. Which is where a spark of the idea comes out of the darkness of Keser. Then Bina, which is the development of the idea, is called the Heichla. The Zohar calls it Nekuda B'Heichla, when you have a point in the whole Heichla, in the whole edifice. And this is Bina, which is the full picture. But what links together Chachma, which is just the point, with Bina, which is the full edifice, that is Das. So let's say a person has an idea and then he reflects on it and meditates on it. So then now it's got length and breadth, and that's Bina. And what connects the Chachma and Bina together, this is Das. Now in terms of the brain, so the Das is compared to it says the Das goes up and touches all the way till the membrane around sort of air, empty space inside the brain. So this idea of air, because it's not defined, doesn't have a specific form, it represents the higher level, which is beyond intellect, and from there ideas come forth, sprout forth. So when a person has a new idea, it comes from the source of intellect, but sometimes a person thinks and he tries to think of an idea and nothing comes out. So obviously there's something that sometimes pulls out an idea and sometimes doesn't, or pulls out a different type of idea. So the source of intellect is called maskil, the keicha maskil, or chachmastima, the hidden intellect. But then what is beyond that is what's called the avira, this air, which surrounds the brain. And in Maimarim elsewhere, in Mikhates, it explains the difference between which is light, and avir, which it means air. Avir has almost the same letters as they're both Aleph, Vav, Resh. The only difference is the Yud in Avir, in air, and look in the Maimon Miketz where he explains this. So Das is this Avir, which is what links Chochmah and Binah. And there's unity between Chochmah and Binah is coming from introducing this higher godly light. And this is a meaning of learning Torah Lishma. To learn Torah Lishma for its sake is through learning Torah, so added godliness will be revealed, will be manifest in the Torah, and that it should link together Chachma and Binah. Because when there's extra godliness, so then it causes unity. And that is it says that Torah creates a unity in the high realms, and in the low realms. The high realms is between Chachma and Binah, and the low realms are among the emotions, that they should be tempered, that love should have some discipline, and discipline, severity should have some kindness. So in earlier times, there was the kindness and severity didn't mix necessarily at all. For example, the generation of the flood, the Mabul, that they were punished for their sin, and it wasn't about their rectification or their benefit, but it was about they need to be punished and they need to be destroyed. And therefore they have no portion in Olam Haba, in the world to come. The same thing with the people of Sodom, because this was a punishment from Teil, which is just, if it's Gvor, it's pure Gvor with nothing else. The same thing with Mitzrayim, which the punishment was not about rectifying them, it was punishing them. But still, the Pasuk says, Bavod Rishon Rinna, that through the destruction of Rishon there's a song, because it does help the world, but it doesn't help them individually. Whereas there's another type of punishment which is like similar to constructive criticism, or like challenging in order to grow, or challenging in order to fix or to purify. So there, the punishment is like the pasuk says, the one that Hashem loves, he will rebuke. So it's in order to improve us, or like washing a child, an infant, for his own benefit, because he's got dirty through and the spiritual count, the metaphor is he's got dirty through sin and therefore he needs to be washed, but it's for the sake of that child. And when it's for the sake of the child, then it's not pure Gvura, it's Gvura mixed with Chesed. And now we can understand what Rabbi Shimon Yochai proclaimed, that I can exempt the world from judgment, from punishment. Why? Because since Rashbi's whole focus was learning Torah Simnasi was his whole preoccupation. So therefore that Torah, that Chachma, that intellect tempers the emotions, so that there's no din, there's no severity without loving kindness. And this is the meaning of Yiskadav, Yiskadash, Shmei Rabbah, that Hashem's name should be made great and sanctified, or the similar pasuk V'ata Yigdal Nakayach Adnai, that now the strength of Adnai of Hashem should be expanded. That through introducing. Now, both in this Maimer and in other Maimarim, it talks about making peace at two levels, at two stratas. So there's both in terms of the inclusion in the kalim, in the containers, and in a unifying light. So the two types of peace are also Das Elyon and Das Tachten, both in the higher spheres and in the lower spheres. That Das both unifies Chacham and Binah and unifies the Midas below it. And the Das Elyon, the way when Das brings together Chacham and Binah, that is through an infusion of Keser, which is beyond both Chacham and Binah. And then that also trickles down to impact on the Midas to unify the emotional attributes. Now, there are also two levels of unity where Chachma, because the whole idea of Chachma is to let your subconscious talk. So to let the ideas in the subconscious come out to the revealed mind. So therefore, it's more strongly about unity, oneness, just because you're not being active. And then, so that's the deep level of unity, whereas the rest of the midas are at the level of a low level of oneness. But the main explanation is that there's two factors in creating this oneness. One is the right energy, the right and secondly, the right kalim, the right containers. Mitzvahs influence the kalim, that the kalim, the containers, should be right for oneness and inclusion, and Torah impacts on the the light, should be right. Okay, this takes us over to page Daf Peches, but since the Maim will finish in one more ice, I think we should continue. So Ice Gimel. So this idea of unity, just as it is with Hashem, so too it is with the person, that the mind and the heart are two opposites. The mind is more calm and cool, whereas the emotions are fiery. And when they're balanced, then the mind is able to guide the heart, and the heart goes according to the dictates of the mind. That's what we mean when we say v'chol nafshecha, with all, that we should love Hashem with all our soul, that it should be according to the way that our mind dictates. And this is through learning Torah, where we have Hashem's word in our mouth. So then that Torah guides our heart. This creates a peace, both a peace, a union between Chokhmah, which is the flash of the idea, with Binah, the development of the idea, and also peace among the emotions. And normally, the Midas is where Eitz Hadas begins, where there begins to be a mixture of good and bad. But when we learn Torah, then the Midas are all lifted; they're elevated to all be good, according to to develop and conduct themselves according to the Torah dictates. And the Torah tells us what is good and appropriate, and what has to be pushed away. And that refines the emotions. Now, because of everything we've said so far, that it's all about oneness, it's all Hashem is Hashem Echad, and whereas Midyan is about separation. So that's why Hashem told Moshe, now you have to Nekom Nikmas B'nai Yisrael, then you have to take the revenge of the Jewish people against Midyan, because they're the ultimate problem. And then afterwards, Moshe, you will pass away. Why? Because since Moshe represents oneness, he had to be alive for this battle with Midian. And although he was already punished, Hashem already told him you'll pass away before going to Eretz Yisrael, but he couldn't pass away until Midian, which is separation and division, was taken care of. Skipping the brackets. Now, Midian is all about separation, and not looking at each other face to face. And that's why to fix it up takes a long time. That's why sinus chinam, which was the problem in the second Beis Hamikdash, baseless hatred, to rectify that takes a very long galus of 1900 years. Whereas the first Beis Hamikdash was regular sins, not the source of all sins, and therefore could be fixed within 70 years, corresponding to the 7 midas. That just like standard life, it says in Tehillim is 70 years, because that fixes up all the impurity of the nefesh bahamis of the animal soul, which has all 7 midas, 7 emotional attributes in a wrong way. So the same thing with the world in general. And therefore, this first Beis Hamikdash, the exile after the first Beis Hamikdash was 70 years. On the other hand, Tikkun, the rectified world, the world of oneness, so to bring the world to that state, from a state of Tohu, so that takes a long time. And for that, we need specifically Moshe. Moshe is the epitome of Chachma, which is all about oneness. And that's also why Yisro, like we said before, that Yisro, who was the priest of Midian, had to come before Matan Torah, before the giving of the Torah, to subdue Midian in order to receive the Torah, which is the Torah is all about peace. And that's why this is the revenge of Havai. It's the revenge of Hashem. Why? Because Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, represents oneness. And we only use the name Havaya in a space of oneness. And that's also why this is the battle for all the Jewish people, because really everyone has to be involved. And that's how it was. The wars in the times of Moshe and in the times of Yeshua were the entire Jewish people together. But afterwards, in the times of the Shoftim, so you could have one tribe fighting or another tribe, not everyone. Because oneness, to reach a level of oneness and unity, that is through intellect being manifest, and that causes oneness and peace. Whereas afterwards, each sphera has its own style, and will talk to its own type of person, and therefore not everyone is involved in every battle. But Midian, which is about separation, so that's something that every Jew can be involved in. Okay, that concludes the Maimer, which is explaining how Midian is about separation, and Moshe and Torah is about Achdus, about oneness, and therefore Moshe had to specifically fight Midian, and that's why Midian is the opposite of Bnei Yisrael in general, and the opposite of Hashem.